Hello and good morning, friends. Today I want to talk to you about a septic inspection that I'm at right now. So this house was from 1970. Older family's been living here forever. They built the home. This gentleman has maintained it, but nobody's inspected it for a while. Who knows what we're going to find? Let's get into it. So the house is from the 1970s. It's been occupied by a single owner who built the house, and he says that he pumps it every few years, which is good, right? A normal septic system, you want to make sure that you pump it out every couple years, no more than 5. Probably shouldn't do no less than 1 year, right? If you're doing it more often than every year, something might be going on with your septic system, right? So it's been a while since anybody's actively looked at the full system in its entirety and seen what it looks like. The homeowner did not really remember where any of the pieces were. So part of the job today was to figure out where is everything, where are all the access points, what do the pipes look like, what does the tank look like, and what do the dry wells look like. Not hard, but we did it, right? So first we're gonna go ahead, pop open the lids, and we're gonna take a look at the riser. Alrighty, so sometimes when you're trying to find these lids, we see that this one's buried. The homeowner had no idea that this was there, but you know, little metal detector and a probe helps you find it out real easy. Sometimes finding these lids can be kind of tedious and take quite a bit of while to do, right? Now, if you don't know what you're looking for, it makes it a lot harder, but if you've been in the area for a while, especially for Baltimore County, I know that all these houses are gonna have the same setup. So we can see that this lid was just below the surface. This one was a little bit easier to find than the other one, but they all in our area generally will have a 6-inch clean out on the front, a riser in the middle, and then all the pits will usually have a cast iron clean out as well. We can see here on this one that they had a PVC lid sitting on top with just the cast iron vertical sticking up out of the ground. So this one was the easiest one to find, but sometimes they're not that simple. This particular property has a riser where some of the riser rings have actually shifted. So we can see here that we can see the sealant, but we can also see that the rings are moving and dirt is getting into the tank. The concern with this is that if dirt's getting in, that also means groundwater is getting in. So you have to be careful with the risers that's leaking because you're putting additional wear and tear on the septic system. That can cause premature failure and all sorts of problems that you don't want to deal with. So usually whenever this is happening, I would recommend to go ahead and switch to a watertight plastic unit, or go ahead and consider replacing this, getting a nice new unit in there, either concrete or plastic, and usually you'll be in pretty good shape. If you did nothing, is it the end of the world? No. But once you start seeing shifts, you start seeing rebar, that riser's on the last leg, and you gotta get ready to start replacing it soon. All right, so now we've looked at the riser and the clean out to the tank. That clean out was buried, of course. So how I found it was I used a metal detector. I knew that in this area that there was going to be a clean out. Every house in this area, this age range, always has one, right? You get unlucky and every now and again somebody's gonna have gotten rid of it, but less common. So we find it, we get that in there, we toss the camera through the pipes. Mostly cast iron pipe, a little bit of debris, but not too bad. That's good, right? Cast iron pipe, as it ages, is gonna start to do what's called pitting. And that's where you're gonna start running into some issues of potential clogs, as that pitting creates texture on the inside of that pipe. That texture will eventually lead to friction. The friction will inevitably lead to a clog. So over time, just by having that pipe exist, you run the risk of it eventually deteriorating enough to where now stuff starts to get stuck in it, and then you start getting clogs, and that's where you start running into some problems. So we ran the camera through, didn't see anything, which is great. The pipes from the tank to the dry wells, the pits, has been replaced with PVC, so we know that that all looks like it's in pretty good shape. The next part that we struggled with was finding where are the cleanouts for the pits. Again, the metal detector helped us find that out. With this area, usually it's cast iron pipes. If you go older than 1960, could be terracotta clay pipe. Newer than mid-80s, it'll be PVC. So it'll be a lot harder to find with PVC and a lot harder to find with terracotta. Not impossible, but much harder. This one, thank goodness, was cast iron, so finding it was way simpler, way easier to do. Pop these open and the pits actually look pretty good. For an original system from the 70s, where most septic systems generally last about 30 to 40 years, this one's far older than that, and it's only used about half of its expected lifespan, right? We put about 300 gallons of water through, didn't see it move an inch. That's good, that's really good. That means that the water's still draining in the surrounding soil. So why do we wanna do all of this? right? So with septic systems, they fail slowly. If you're not gonna look at it every now and again or have it inspected thoroughly from time to time, maybe every 10 years, 15 years, it's gonna sneak up on you and you might not notice it, right? Now, if you're getting it inspected or if you're seeing like what the condition of everything is, now you're able to get a little bit better idea of like, roughly when's this thing gonna fail on me, right? So if you're at about 50% of the pits full of water and it's been, you know, the same 2 people living here forever, they raised their family here and it's only about 50%, they'll basically have this thing working until they die, right? It shouldn't have any other problems. A newer family, they're going to use a little bit more water, they're going to be a little bit more aggressive on it, so then they're going to end up needing to make sure that they budget for eventual replacement. But knowing what you're working with helps you to budget and save up, right? So for this particular property, older family was living here. If it was just them living here, whatever, let it sit and keep doing its thing. Younger family moving in, especially if they're a family of 4 through 6, right? Now you got to start to make sure that you budget for a replacement. The reason why is if you're at 50% life with only 2 older people living here and it's still the original system, once you move in with a younger family and you start using more and more water, you're going to put more and more stress on the system and eventually it'll fail. So whereas with the older family, you might get 15, 20 years on it, the newer family might be closer to 5 to 10, right? All of these are rough hypothetical numbers. The only way you'll know for sure is if you physically measure it every year. If you have a pit, that's what you should be doing, right? If you have a dry well on your system, you want to make sure you go out there and you want to make sure that you measure those liquid levels every year so you know, am I losing an inch? Am I losing 6 inches? Am I losing a foot? How many inches of space am I losing every year? If you do that over the course of 2 or 3 years, now you're going to be able to get a much more dialed in number of how much longer does this system last, right? I have plenty of clients where we measure it every spring. We say, all right, you're losing 4 inches of space every year. So if you're losing 4 inches of space and you got a foot left, you got 3 more years to go until you got to worry about replacement. Having that kind of insight and that kind of knowledge helps you really kind of micromanage your finances and budget. So that way, you know, okay, in 3 years, I've got a $20,000 expense coming on the horizon. Start saving now or start working out how am I going to finance this. Versus if you haven't touched or inspected the system in 10 or 15 years, you may not know that that 3-year mark's coming and then it'll sneak up on you and now you're stuck paying for this giant bill and you weren't ready for it. So if you have a dry well, strongly recommend that you get an observation port, especially one that you can get into and you can see it yourself. As a homeowner, it's super easy. It's kind of gross, but wear some gloves, get a tape measure from Home Depot for 10 bucks, 15 bucks. Use it exclusively for that, and you just measure the liquid level. How full is this thing? Once you get a couple measurements, you'll be in good shape. Drain fields is a little bit more complicated to measure, right? So some newer systems will have observation ports, not always, right? So like unless you have a probe, it's a much more difficult for a homeowner to check it. But these old school pits, super easy. If you have one, a homeowner should always be looking at it. So what happens if it fills up, right? So as septic systems age, they're gonna start to fill with water. Eventually it'll fill with so much water that it's got nowhere else to go but to back up. When it backs up, it's game over, the system's done, it's time to replace it. Generally speaking, that'll take about 30 or 40 years. In practice, I've seen plenty of systems last 50, 60 years, right? So like this house was from the 70s. We're already at the 50 plus year mark and it's still working just fine, right? It's still got plenty of time left to go. But not everything hits those averages. Some people get a little bit more, some people get a little bit less, some people are smack dead center in the middle, right? This particular one happens to be the exception where it's going longer than what you would expect. That's good, that's fine. When people tell you you don't have to take care of your septic or you don't have to pump it, it's a load of baloney. Don't listen to them, not a good idea. Same thing with the additives, right? Yes, you have an older system. Could additives help? Sure, I don't see how they couldn't hurt. But there is zero evidence, zero reports or any kind of universities that have studied it and said that that stuff actually works. There's far more information saying that none of that stuff actually does anything to the contrary. So I tend to go more towards the people who are way smarter than me telling me don't do it. I'm not gonna do it, right? So in all, the system looks like it's in pretty good shape. If you don't know where the pieces of your septic system are, it's a very good idea to either find it yourself or hire somebody who's very familiar with the systems in that area, have them help you find it, right? This one, we found all of the pieces, got all the pipes, we know exactly where everything is because they want to build an addition. They know, okay, this little section of the lot, can't drive over it. Over there, sure, no problem, right? But had they not done this step, you could have accidentally collapsed it. Maybe you drive a bobcat or a bulldozer over top of your septic and you crush it. Now you go from an inconvenient problem to a major problem where now you can't flush the toilet, right? So if you have all this stuff found, it's also important to make sure that you as a homeowner have the ability and the knowledge to know what you're looking at, right? So I always make sure I tell my clients, this is what I'm looking at and this is why. And the reason I do that is so that way they, if they want, on their own volition, can also go out there and measure it themselves and see the exact same things that I'm seeing. I think that home ownership requires a little bit of ownership of your own, right? You got to make sure that you're taking care of the stuff that's on your house. But I think we're in pretty good shape, right? If you found value in this, or if I've given you some information or something that you like about this, please hit that like button and subscribe. I have more videos posted every day on the World Well and Septic. Hopefully, if you guys have any areas of conversation you would like me to discuss, you leave a comment. I try to get to all of them as quick as I can, sometimes faster than others, but give me some ideas. What do you want me to talk about? What kind of things do you guys want to learn about? Maybe I can find a way to make a video or help you figure out whatever situation you're working with. But anyway, guys, till next time.